What's good? It's Woog. We've got a new hotshot out of Sheffield, England, taking on a former three-time title challenger who I think Eddie Hearn and Matchroom are hoping is over the hill. We've got Dalton Smith, 15 wins and 0 losses, taking on Jose Zepeda, 37 wins, 4 losses, and 2 no contests. Dalton Smith is the hotshot I was referring to, and this is a pretty significant step-up fight. He's been showing that he's got the goods. Again, he's out of Sheffield. Sheffield has a pretty rich boxing history. Over the years, they've had Johnny Nelson, Kell Brook, Junior Witter, Kid Galahad, and of course, Prince Nassim Hamed, among others. And Dalton Smith is basically a new Matchroom hopeful. He's been looking really good on the regional scene. He's picked up good wins against Sam O'Mason, Billy Allington, and most recently, Sam Maxwell. Dalton Smith has defended that regional British title a few times successfully now, and most of his wins come via knockout. Out of his 15 wins, he's knocked 11 of his opponents out. He was fighting on some pretty significant undercards, like he fought on the Lee Wood versus Mauricio Lara, the first one. He fought on that undercard, and that one was, of course, in Nottingham, England. Aside from that, he's been fighting a lot in Sheffield, his hometown. When it's not there, it'll be like in Manchester. He's fought in Leeds. But 2 of his last 4 fights were in Sheffield, and this upcoming fight against Jose Zepeda is also going to be in Sheffield. So before we even start breaking down like tactically who we think is going to win this one, keep in mind that this fight is going to be a raucous crowd. You know, they hit the drum throughout the fight, like as the round's going on. You see certain regions where they'll do that. They'll actually be playing music while the fighters are fighting. This is probably going to be that type of environment. They will play a repeated tune with some chanting, again, with some drum, and with what sounds like either a saxophone or a trumpet, but it's a very, you'll know it if you've heard it. So again, I expect this to be a raucous crowd, very pro Dalton Smith crowd. Now, in terms of what Dalton Smith brings to the table, because we know what Jose Zepeda brings to the table. He's a southpaw. He's a pretty good sharpshooter with that left hand. He's looking for an opportunity to let it go. He'll throw a nice right lead hook as well, but he's really looking to run you into a left hand, a big left hand. Like out of Jose Zepeda's 37 wins, 28 have come via knockout. But Dalton Smith, he's not the most voluminous puncher. He doesn't throw a ton of punches, but he is pretty quick. He's pretty athletic. He's got a nice right hand, and boy, is he looking to deploy it. Like his jab is almost more of a prober and a range finder than it is a popping, meaningful punch. Like he's usually using it as a setup for his right hand, and he's got some nice feints too. So he'll do something where he'll kind of throw the probing lead left hand out, and then he will sometimes fake with the right hand, just throw his shoulder, and then come with a sweeping left hook. That will often throw his opponent off because they're so spooked looking for that right hand. But even when he's setting the right hand up, he will do different offbeat things. Like he will fake a jab, throw the right. He will kind of waste a punch down low, look low, throw the right high. We see that a lot. But not only that, he's got different kinds of right hands with different rhythms. Like he'll throw a nice straight right hand, and it is super straight. He could throw it as a lead, and he could throw it as a counter. If you engage him, he could time you nicely, catch you with the straight right hand. When he's throwing it as a lead, sometimes he'll be feinting. And if you're on your back foot, or if he feels that he's got your respect and you're a little bit spooked of him throwing that right hand, he will switch it up and he'll throw, kind of probing other punches. But what he's really looking to set up in that point, if he's moving forward, which he usually is on his front foot, he will throw this right hand, but with a hitch on it. Like he will kind of drop his shoulders and then throw a looping right hand. And that loop throws the timing off. So if he was going to throw the same straight right hand that he had been throwing, you would have already received that one. But when he puts the loop on it, he's only halfway there with the punch when he throws that hitch to it. So he'll drop his shoulder. You've already thought that it was going to hit, boom. At this point, no, it's coming like a half a beat later. And he catches some of those opponents super cleanly. Like he dropped the hell out of Sam Maxwell in his very latest fight, dropped him badly with that kind of delayed right hand. and he's a very accurate puncher. Again, he doesn't throw a ton of punches, but he sells out when he goes in, to the point where I'm looking at Dalton Smith versus Jose Zepeda, and I'm worried about a clash of heads. Like, Dalton Smith had a pretty bad clash of heads against Sam Maxwell, opened up a cut on Dalton Smith. He had a clash of heads against Billy Allington in the fight right before that. Now, that one went the 12-round distance. I mean, Dalton Smith won just about every round. He won super wide on the scorecard, and he dropped Billy Allington in that fight, although I thought that the ref kind of blew the call because the ref was separating them. Dalton Smith will look for moments, like he will hit you right after the clinch. He will even hit you sometimes in the clinch when the ref is seemingly calling a break to the action. Like, if the ref gives his verbal cue but doesn't physically break you up, look out, because Dalton Smith is still looking to take your head off in those moments. It's almost Josh Taylor-ish in that fight against Jose Ramirez, where Josh Taylor was finding those little opportunities. One of the knockdowns occurred in a kind of a questionable moment where the judge tapped Jose Ramirez on the back, but not Josh Taylor. So Jose Ramirez was kind of letting his guard down, protect yourself at all times, and Josh Taylor took that moment to drop Jose Ramirez. Dalton Smith will hit you with a punch in one of those types of moments. Again, that's how the knockdown of Billy Allington occurred. But again, Billy Allington went the distance, but there was a clash of heads in his latest 2 fights. So because of the way that he throws those right hands, again, he's a little bit episodic. Like, he will patiently hunt you down, taking a step forward, feinting, changing levels, wasting a punch, putting his probe hand out, doing a lot of little things. He's got a lot of tricks. Again, he will fake the right hand, throw the left hook. He's got some nice tricks, but they work when he thinks that the opponent is already kind of spooked. But because of the way that he juts his body in when he throws the right hand, he's throwing his body with it, his head included. Jose Zepeda being a lefty, so you've got the orthodox versus southpaw dynamic. Jose Zepeda will kind of jut his body forward when he throws and really sells out on a left hand. So Jose Zepeda is going to be looking to rifle Dalton Smith with the left. Dalton Smith is going to be looking to rifle Jose Zepeda with a right. What could go wrong head clash wise, right? So I would not be surprised if there is a meaningful clash of heads that results in a cut, maybe even a fight stoppage. With these guys in particular and the way that they throw their backhand, I'm really considering that possibility. And Dalton Smith is only a little bit taller than Jose Zepeda, like maybe an inch taller. I'm talking maybe like 5'9" against 5'8", even though Dalton Smith is listed at 5'9.5". Now, if Dalton Smith was about to fight Jose Zepeda, where Dalton Smith is in the point of his career where he currently is, but we were talking prime Jose Zepeda, I think you could even make Jose Zepeda the favorite here. But in this fight, Jose Zepeda is like a plus 250. So he's like a 2.5 to 1 underdog with Dalton Smith a minus 270, nearly a 3 to 1 favorite. That is because, unfortunately, in this case, Dalton Smith might be catching Jose Zepeda in that right point of Jose Zepeda's career for Dalton Smith to take it. Now, again, Jose Zepeda at his best, he was really, really good. Like, I mean, if you look at his resume, he had a very good lightweight career where he contended for the title against Terry Flanagan. He suffered an injury, Jose Zepeda, I believe it was to his shoulder. That was in his lightweight part of his career. Then he goes up to 140. I would say that he peaked around the time of maybe 2019 to 2020, 2021. Basically from just before fighting Jose Ramirez, very good fighter. He fought Jose Ramirez very evenly. This is the former unified champion Jose Ramirez we're talking about here. It resulted in a majority decision win for Jose Ramirez in a fight that seemingly could have gone either way. But after that, he being Jose Zepeda, beat Jose Pedraza. He had the fight of the year, knocking out Ivan Baranchyk. That was a fight that it included like several knockdowns in only the first few rounds. That's one of those fights that you have to see to believe. Like, everybody watching that fight was just like, what the hell am I witnessing? Because of the way that they were trading knockdowns in the first few rounds. I mean, it ended in the 5th with Zepeda knocking Ivan Baranchyk out cold, but Zepeda himself was dropped several times in that fight. And sometimes I wonder how much that fight in particular took out of Jose Zepeda. Like, he might only be 34 years old in actual years, but in fight years, because of how many good fighters he's fought against, he might be in boxing years a little bit older than that. So after he beats Jose Pedraza, he has that Fight of the Year knockout win over Ivan Baranchyk. Then he has an unimpressive victory against Hank Lundy. He didn't look great, but he won via unanimous decision. It was just kind of an uninspiring performance. And then he knocks out Josue Vargas. It was a little bit of a grudge match there. Josue Vargas was coming into that fight talking a bunch of trash. Jose Zepeda knocked him out in the first round. And then he has a vacant WBC junior welterweight, we're talking 140 or light welterweight, vacant title bout against Regis Prograis. I went to that fight out in Carson, enjoyed the hell out of myself. That was a pretty fun fight, but Regis Prograis is a come forward fighter. Different style than Dalton Smith. They both hit pretty hard. But Regis Prograis at the time was seen as, one of the 2 or 3 best fighters at 140. And going into that fight, there was a lot of excitement because Regis Prograis had hit such a frustrating patch of his career after the close loss to Josh Taylor. He couldn't get a meaningful fight for a few years after that. So then he would have that fight against Jose Zepeda for, again, the vacant 140-pound WBC belt. And Jose Zepeda, we knew was good because, again, he beat Pedraza, fought evenly with Jose Ramirez. Well, Jose Zepeda ended up succumbing to the power and the speed and the craft of Regis Prograis. Regis Prograis scored an 11th round knockout, capturing that WBC 140-pound title that he would then later lose 2 fights later to Devin Haney. So then Zepeda returns to the ring, has a, fight against a much lesser fighter in Niraj Goyat. Zepeda wins that via unanimous decision. I believe that one was up at welterweight. Well, then Jose Zepeda gets his next good opportunity, but this time he's kind of playing the role as gatekeeper against Richardson Hitchens. And I think that fight and Jose Zepeda's lack of effectiveness against a pretty tall, very good range controlling, and when I say very tall, not super tall, but we're talking 5'10", 5'10 and a half, Richardson Hitchens with a very long reach, 74-inch reach. That's the same reach as Terrence Crawford. Plus with the style, they call it a negative style, or, just a jab heavy, keep the long arms out, maintain range, don't mix it up on the inside too much. Because of Jose Zepeda's inability to get out of first or second gear and Richardson Hitchens winning that fight via wide unanimous decision, I think that's why these Dalton Smith versus Jose Zepeda betting odds are the way that they are, where Dalton Smith is a pretty sizable, again, a minus 270, nearly 3-1 favorite. It's because of Hitchens versus Jose Zepeda as much as it is Jose Zepeda getting knocked out in the 11th round by Regis Prograis. So Zepeda has lost 2 out of his last 3 fights. And I look at this one against Dalton Smith as kind of being Zepeda's last chance at having a path to another title shot. If he loses this one, that will be 3 out of his last 4 fights that he would have lost. Then you've got to wonder if he even wants to stick around in the sport at that point, because you would then go from being a title challenger to a gatekeeper and then to, litmus test where it's like, okay, well, let's see if you are of an upper caliber. And if you could beat Jose Zepeda, that's kind of the role that he's occupying in this fight against Dalton Smith. Otherwise, I don't think Eddie Hearn would have put him in there with Zepeda if the belief was that Zepeda was still anywhere near his prime. Now, again, Dalton Smith is good. He's showing talent. And again, he's got a very nice right hand. But again, I don't think that they would have put him in there at this stage of his career with a prime Jose Zepeda. So I think that we should consider that when we're just thinking about how this fight would play out. So what do I think is going to happen here? Again, I'm worried about the clash of heads. I think that Zepeda, style-wise, is going to be a little bit problematic for Dalton Smith. Like, Dalton Smith, he can play the bully really well when he knows that he's better than you. But I haven't seen him in the ring with somebody who he really had to respect and really had to be cautious against, at least in his last several fights. Against Jose Zepeda, if Dalton Smith sells out on right hands and eats a left, I could see Dalton Smith getting dropped on his behind. I could also see Dalton Smith catching Jose Zepeda and dropping Zepeda. In fact, I do think that there will be a knockdown in this fight. I think that Dalton Smith at some point is going to put Jose Zepeda on the canvas. Again, it's possible that Zepeda does the same to Dalton Smith. I just think that there's a higher likelihood that Dalton Smith drops Jose Zepeda. probably in the middle. If he drops him early, very impressive. I think that it would more likely occur in the middle rounds. But again, Dalton Smith will have a much more measured pace when he thinks that there is potential danger coming back at him. So I don't think he's going to fight Jose Zepeda in the same way that he fought Sam Maxwell or Sam O'Mason. Like, not that he was head over skis, just all in, rushing in on them. He wasn't doing anything like that. But boy, was he committing when he wanted to make a move and set up a big right hand or even a left hook. He did so with carte blanche, not really worried about what was coming back. He's going to have to worry about that with Jose Zepeda. And if he doesn't start fast against Zepeda, because sometimes, again, it'll take Dalton Smith a while to start cooking, Zepeda can potentially grow in confidence, and Zepeda won't have the same inability to close the distance against Dalton Smith that he had against Richardson Hitchens. Richardson Hitchens fought in a way where it looked like Jose Zepeda was going to have to swim across a moat to get to Richardson Hitchens. That won't be the case here. They will more or less be in range with one another at about the same distance and about the same time. So who's going to be faster on the draw? Who's going to be more willing to pull the trigger? Who's going to be more defensively responsible, and who's going to be less reckless to where they're not the one who runs into the other person's backhand? I just think that Jose Zepeda, being 34 at this point, his legs, I believe, will tire a little bit sooner than Dalton Smith, to where Zepeda will have to lunge a little bit more than Smith, giving Smith more opportunities to catch him with a nice right hand and then to start slowly walking Zepeda down. Dalton Smith is naturally the slightly bigger guy. Like Zepeda used to be a lightweight again and then graduated to 140. Dalton Smith is more or less starting the meaningful part of his career at 140. So Dalton Smith, I could see kind of being cautious in the first couple of rounds. Maybe Zepeda wins 2 out of the first 4, but I think that by rounds 5, 6, 7, you will see Dalton Smith start to have the more consistent work, minute over minute over minute, assuming he doesn't walk into an issue like Jermall Charlo did in his fight against Matt Korobov, where he was eating left hands, and it took Jermall Charlo, the bigger Charlo, some time, a few rounds, to really figure out how to engage and how to land on Korobov without eating that left hand. If Dalton Smith could get around that, then I could see him start winning rounds more reliably by the time we get to the middle of the fight. And if Zepeda doesn't hurt Dalton Smith or isn't winning more of the rounds by the time you get to like 6 or 7, I think that it's going to be increasingly good for Dalton Smith and increasingly bad for Jose Zepeda. And I think that it's around rounds 6 through 8, maybe even 9, that we could get a knockdown from Dalton Smith knocking down Jose Zepeda. But I don't think Dalton Smith, who again stops most of his opponents, I don't think he's going to get the stoppage here. I think that Jose Zepeda is a veteran. I think that Dalton Smith, although he hits hard, I don't think he's going to open up in the way that Regis Prograis does when Prograis starts sensing that he's got an opponent hurt or nearly hurt. Prograis just throws more punches as he starts pouring it on than Dalton Smith. So I'm going to go with Dalton Smith to win against, again, 3-time title challenger. And look, if Zepeda wins that, then hey, welcome back to the elite, right? Zepeda will then be back into the top 10 according to Ring Magazine. Now, as it stands, this is one of the deepest divisions in boxing. So neither of these guys right now are in the top 10. But just before that loss to Richardson Hitchens, Jose Zepeda was in the back half of the top 10. Before the loss to Regis Prograis, Jose Zepeda was like in the top 4 in the division. So that's how much 2 losses can drop you off the map. And that's where Jose Zepeda finds himself right now. But with a win over a hot prospect like Dalton Smith, who again has been holding on to that British regional title for some time now, that would pretty much put Jose Zepeda, it would do to Jose Zepeda's late stage of his career what Gabe Rosado was able to do when he knocked out Bek Bully Melikuziev. Like, I think that it would have that type of late career effect for Jose Zepeda, but I don't think he's going to pull it off against Dalton Smith in this case. I'm taking Dalton Smith, something like, I think we might think we're seeing a 8 rounds to 4 type of fight, maybe even 7 to 5, but I think that the scorecards might appear more pro Dalton Smith by a round or two than what we see. Like, we might see a close fight, like a pretty close fight, 115, 113, 116, 112, but we might get 117, 111 or something where it's like, damn, really? It was that wide? But I'm going to go with Dalton Smith, probably via unanimous decision. I think that Zepeda's legs are going to start failing him, not in terms of getting like jelly-legged or getting dropped repeatedly. I'm just saying his inability to keep up with the much younger 27-year-old Dalton Smith. So yeah, I'm going Dalton Smith, competitive but unanimous decision win. Let me know your thoughts on this one, Dalton Smith versus Jose Zepeda. How good do you think Dalton Smith is? Again, he's kind of like one of the emerging hot shots coming out of England, Sheffield, and he's one of Eddie Hearn's rising prospects. Again, prospect turned contender, because Dalton Smith headlined a card in his latest fight against Sam Maxwell. I think that was the one that he headlined. But let me know how good you think Dalton Smith is and how realistic you think Jose Zepeda's chances are against him at this stage of Zepeda's career. And also, if Dalton Smith wins, how good do you think he can do in this stacked 140-pound division? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.